how do you pronounce your full name?
Rishi Sharma.
Sharma.
Yeah.
Just the way it's spelled.
Yes, sir.
Sharma's not short for anything.
Nah, not like Charmin Ultra
You
Strong or some
You
shit.
you got fucking fortunate.
Hell yeah.
Like,
Well, I wish, man. Everyone fucks my name up. It's just like Richi, Rashi, Pishi.
you get peachy sometimes.
Dude, I get some so stupid shit, like not even like close, like Richard. Like, get the fuck out of here. Do I look like a
So-
fucking Richard to you?
Sometimes people will fuck up my last name.
Vixe?
Yeah.
What? Like, what do they say?
They add like extra vowels like Vioxa, and I'm like, nah, man. Like,
Vixea.
it's actually Vasai, and my dad's last name is Chantavasai.
Chanta
But
Vasai.
for whatever
You're
reason,
Lao, right?
yeah,
Gotcha.
for whatever reason, he shortened my name and my brother, and then just I think white people just screwed it up for so long, it became Vixe. So I was just
Dude, Chanta Vasai sounds very Thai, almost. I had a friend, her last name was like Chanta, Chakra Corn or something. Like,
oh yeah,
yeah, so I know like Laos is like within that region between
Yeah.
like, Thai, Vietnam, and Cambodia.
I'm trying to think. Like most Lao last names they're usually a lot longer too,
Mhm.
but there'll be like a lot of like Rata and like Sinrata, and like
It's almost like Buddhist.
yeah,
Kind of like
pretty
that
much.
Buddhist. Yeah, dude, for sure. Because like Indian last names can like have that too. You'll have like, and it's weird because it goes by like a caste system, surprisingly. So
Okay,
Sharma is and I'm not trying to toot my own horn here. It's just what I've been told is like, if you know about the caste system of India, there was like Brahmin, Kshatris, and I can't remember the last two, and then there was Untouchables. So it's like within the last names, there's actually like last names that actually mean the same last name. So it's weird. So it's like the last name Sharma is actually equivalent to the same of the last name Kaushik. So my cousin's last name is Kaushik,
okay,
right? But I'm a Sharma. Regardless, it's still Brahmin.
yeah.
I mean, it's a useless system, but it's still like weirdly like.
So does that mean you guys are like kind of like high up in the caste
So it's
system?
weird. Yeah, it's weird. Like my father's side is, but my mom is actually a Kshatriya because like where she was born in India,
Yeah.
she, that was like the caste. I guess majorly that was there. It's the warrior caste,
Okay.
and they were called like the they were the ones that went into battle, but they weren't considered above priests because religion like took like a huge thing in India.
Yeah.
Super weird, bro. Like I don't know.
India is an interesting place, man.
It absolutely is.
I mean, even just the geography, and then just all the different cultures and religions. I don't know. I've never been there, but
Yeah.
I would love to go at some point.
So it's funny, man. Like, North and South India, I don't know if you've ever heard, but it's like they say like you could split a line across India and it would be like literally feeling like you're in two different countries.
Yeah.
It's so weird because like you'll go to North India and you'll see more of a presence of Hinduism, Islam, more so those religions, Sikhism, that's more north. Still the prevalence is always Hindu in India, just because that's like if you put 1.2 billion people in one area,
Right.
you're gonna have a lot of, and then the majority are Hindus.
Yeah.
It's gonna be Hindu on both the north and the south, but the south actually has a lot of Christianity. Again, of course, Hinduism, Jainism, all these like Buddhism is also pretty big.
Yeah, Buddhism.
It's like really interesting because it's like you go to two completely different countries, but you're in the same country. And it's funny because the people actually start looking different. Like the people in the South are renowned for being like shorter and darker.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's just probably nutrition, or
So like it's closer to the equator. That's my hypothesis. I'm not sure. But I think that also like if you like look at it like geographically and like ethnically, like when Hinduism started, it actually came from Aryans. And what Aryans are is like it's not like that Nazi shit. What it was is it was a group of like fair-skinned people from like way in the Hindu Kush mountains near in
Yeah.
Afghanistan, and they migrated down to India. And when they migrated down, so they're more light and fairer skin. So it's kind of weird because what it kind of is like is the South. So I was watching a documentary on it, and it was like after Africa, like there was a lot of migration throughout like that eastern region,
Mhm.
and so there were darker skinned people who were coming into India, and they just feel that the darker skinned people just kind of landed more in the southern area of India. So it was kind of like the more first gen. I'm not sure if this is true or not. I just think that like it might kind of make sense.
Yeah.
And then you have like a lighter skin group coming down from, a more towards, Eastern Europe. And then they're moving down. And then, you have that light skin kind of mixing in with the darker skin, bringing that Indian color like you see, like I have.
Yeah.
So it's kind of weird.
How are you guys all so hairy, though? I've never understood that.
So, like, that's a funny question, bro. Like, we're known for being hairy and, like, having the smallest dicks. Like, it's so annoying.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, dude, because it's
well, we get that, too.
Yeah, but it's like measured as, like, Indians on average, like, males have, like, the smallest wieners.
But you guys also did kind of write the Kama Sutra.
That's true. Exactly, bro. Like,
know.
and so this is where I'm like, I'm not Indian because my dick isn't that small, right? But I don't know. I'm not tooting my own horn. Like, I'm just like, but like, yeah, it's like known for the reason we're like hairy. I don't have no fucking idea.
Yeah, because like Southeast Asians are like almost hairless, man. We're
absolutely.
Yeah.
Fuckers can't grow like a beard.
Dude, I haven't shaved this year, and
are you serious?
Yeah, I'm just still.
Jesus
this
Christ.
is all trashy like.
It's just
pathetic.
pathetic.
Yeah, it's just whatever. It's the look I'm going for. Or it's just like,
yeah, for sure.
Right now, I just kind of I'm at the point in my life where I'm just like, whatever.
How old are you?
I am. Well, how old do you think I am?
So I would say if I was to think.
You're a cultured guy, so
I
think your estimate's gonna be a lot closer than most people.
I would say right around like just 30. 30?
32.
32, okay.
Yeah.
So I'd say just there. Because I'm like, you seem a little bit older because you're more wise. Because I'm like, you're not in your 20s. You're not that young. But I mean, like, fucking.
I was a dumbass in my 20s.
Dude, shit, man. I'm telling you, man.
Are you, you're not 30 yet?
Nah, bro. I'm 22.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm young as
baby.
Shit. Dude, I mean, yeah, I'm like the youngest on my team. I started when I was like 19 playing rugby.
Okay.
So it was like,
well, let's take it back.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. How would you describe your disability?
Yeah, dude. So I actually really wanted to talk about this. I think it's really important. So what I was diagnosed with at the age of 2 years old is a disease called Charcot Marie Tooth, CMT. You actually had someone on your podcast who had the disease as well.
Oh, the same one.
Yeah, Eric. I think his name was.
Yeah.
So it's super, super like interesting as a disease. Like I'm really into like bioengineering and gene therapy and shit.
Mm.
So like the way this disease works is you're basically born, imagine able-bodied. You're born able-bodied, but you're not technically because genetically you're not symptomatic yet, but you have a genetic mutation somewhere in your genome.
Yeah.
What it does is it affects your peripheral nerves, right? Now, I explain it the best because this, for me, is how I would explain my function, is if you took my forearm basically down, right, that's where you see the most effect.
Yeah.
But if you go up, you will see that I still have movement. I still have strength, right? I have strength in my biceps. I have strength in my triceps. I have shoulders. I have pectorals, core, hip even, like,
Yeah.
But as soon as you go distally, that is where the nerve, basically what it is nerve damage. It's a neuropathy. So
right.
It is a progressive disease. I don't know where it's going to progress. I hope it's not going to get worse, but I mean, like, I'll tell you, like, my hands have definitely gotten shittier over the years. My wrist function went, like, and it's weird because I don't remember it, like, losing it. But it's kind of like, as I look back at pictures, I'm like, oh, yeah, for sure, I lost, like, some of that function.
It just slowly kind of
happens.
happens.
It slowly happened. But what's weird is I've always learned to adapt. Like, I use my upper arms like a motherfucker, like, to do everything, right? Like, I can lift weights still. I can still gain strength. So this is the weird thing about this disease is because it's called it's like a very heterogeneous disease. And, what that means is, like, it's different for everyone. So I'll give you an example. And you'll see it in rugby a lot. It's so fucking, like, crazy. Like, you've played internationally. So you've played against, like, Japan.
Yeah.
So Japan actually has, like, at least, I think at this point, 3 players who have Charcot Marie Tooth.
Okay.
So Daisuke, Ike.
Yep.
He has CMT. Now, he's a lot more functional than I am. But if you look at him, he really shows all the symptoms, like, exactly, like, to the T.
Hands, for sure.
Hands, the forearms, like, the atrophy in the wrist. It's just he has more movement, right? So even though it's movement, it's not necessarily strength. I think people get that fucked up sometimes. They think that, oh, if it moves, it's strong. It's like, that's not really true. Like, you could probably say, too, you may have a spasm, but that's not necessarily saying you have full quadriceps. Right. So Daisuke is like a more functional version of CMT, but he's not even the most functional. He's still considered gimpy in a lot of ways because there are people who have this disease that are literally ambulatory, and it only affects maybe like their knees down.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So they're able to get around on like
and
braces.
Then braces, or even sometimes without them. I mean, there was a time where I was able to walk without any braces back very early in life.
You can bring that mic back up.
Yeah, got you. Yeah. But like, straight up, like I lost that function. But to be honest with you, it was never like an able-bodied walk. Like, I don't want this to be confused as like I went from perfectly healthy to like completely crippled. It was like the gradual progress showed very early in age. But I consider myself a lucky one, and just like anyone really would, is because, so like my example I was saying in Japan, then they have their 1-5 Norimatsu.
Yep,
if you know who he is. He's a lot more gimpier than Daisuke, pretty clearly, right? He's a lot less functional than even me, because I could look at him and say that I have more function than him without a doubt. And there's even guys like on Sweden, they have that one dude, Jensen, Stefan. So he's like a toothpick. Like his arms are just completely toothpick-like, right?
I didn't know these were all CMT guys.
Yeah. You see what I'm saying? It's like, because it's the one thing we always like, if I was to say to look for, if you're trying to see if that might be someone who has CMT, the floppy wrists is like the biggest giveaway.
Yeah.
But again, that's not the only one, right? Because Daisuke doesn't have floppy wrists, but he has some really weak wrists. And then you have someone from Denmark like Leon Jorgensen. I'm like name dropping like a motherfucker, but like whatever. Leon, he's a 2-5, but like, again, if you take off his like all his taping and shit.
I thought he was like MD.
And so Charcot Marie Tooth, it's weird. So like, and this is where it gets really political. It's really fucking weird because I'm part of a group. I volunteer for a group called the Hereditary Neuropathy Foundation. And so their whole point is to push treatments, push cures, and push proper research as well as proper information of this disease. And the number one thing that gets fucked up is, so is CMT considered muscular dystrophy? Yes. But is it actually a muscle disease? No.
Okay.
Right? So that's kind of where it gets fucked up. It's technically a neuromuscular disease. So just like a spinal cord injury, it's not that your muscles aren't fucked up.
Yeah, it's
like genetically.
It's more neuro.
Exactly. It's neurological, right? Your neuron, wherever the damage happened in your spinal cord, from there down is fucked up. And because of that, the systemic part of the portion, right, is you can't move that muscle. Because it's kind of like the shittiest thing I've always like is that once a nerve goes, everything goes. Sensation, movement, right? I mean, it's crazy. Like, and so from my research and my studying on this shit, and huge shout out to H&F because like they're pushing some really good research into like actually putting out some drugs for this disease. It's ridiculous. So like I was saying is it's really heterogeneous, right? So there's so many different levels. You have guys that are walking, you have guys that are on ventilators. That's how crazy of a difference it is.
Yeah, that's a huge spectrum.
Yeah, and it's scary because, you don't know where you're going to lie on the spectrum because you don't know how bad it's going to get. I've talked to guys who are like 60, 70 years old who have been diagnosed with the disease, and, some are doing fantastic and some are not. It's really, and it's scary because, it's like you try to align yourself with people you think are similar to yourself, but it's dangerous to do that. And that's something that like I think it's really important for anyone who's listening to this podcast that has the disease is your journey is specific to you. I've gone to a lot of fucking neuromuscular doctors, and like the biggest thing they've always said, they were like, you cannot compare yourself to other people because they were like, if two kids who were born, like this is a genetic disease, right?
Yeah. So
it's normally running in families. Now, I'm the only one in my family who has the disease, but it's not abnormal for that to happen. They were like, if two people in the same family can be born with the exact same type of CMT, the exact same mutation, but can present differently physically, where you have somebody who's able to walk, move pretty easily, and someone who is maybe wheelchair bound or worse, it's crazy. And they're like, if we were to try to compare you to those people, we're doing you a disservice, because that's like, it's unfortunately, it's not like cancer where stages are pretty easy to be able to be like, okay, you're at this stage or you're at this stage. It's different for every single person. The only one thing is like it's an umbrella term of a name, right?
Gotcha.
See what I'm saying?
No, I feel the same way with like spinal cord injury. Like you look at one C5 compared to another C5.
Oh my God, yeah.
And it's, one could be incomplete. Even if they were both complete, like
Sure.
they're gonna have different tenodesis, and like, one might have stronger wrists on one side, and
Absolutely.
there's so many like.
So you're
variation.
a C5 quad, right?
Yeah, I'm a C5 incomplete.
C5 incomplete.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
So I don't know if it's Asia A or B, but I don't have any movement, but I got sensation.
Okay.
So I got, not like normal sensation, like hot or cold or sharper, but I can feel the difference between like sharp and dull.
Right.
But it doesn't feel like sharp. So if you stuck a knife in my leg, I'd feel it, and it wouldn't feel good, but it wouldn't feel like how
it would have
an
felt
able body
like an able body would have felt.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it's hard to like describe that to people who don't, because like for me, like I have sensation loss as well in my like feet and lower extremities. My sensation is surprisingly really good, impaired but still very good.
Yeah.
And no, I completely understand exactly what you're saying. Like I can't feel vibrations in my toes, but I can feel hot and cold. I can feel like if I stub my toe against something, like that shit hurts like a motherfucker. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't. I actually feel when I have my phone, because I'll tuck my phone in my side guard right against my thigh.
Yeah, me too.
But I do it on my left side so I can feel the vibration.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Because if it's on my right side, if I'm not like thinking about it or if I don't see it going off, I won't notice it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
No, dude, for sure. I mean, it's weird, man. And like you were saying, like C5s, like, or not just C5s, any spinal cord injury, so different from each of the other. Like,
oh yeah.
Like, I'll give you an example. We have two guys on our team. Both are C5 injuries. One is significantly more functional than the other, right? Significantly. And I mean, it's like the other one has some tricep, has some finger movement, has a lot more wrist. And the other one is like, you're very typical C5 quadriplegic, tenodesis a little bit, bicep, no tricep, like very kind of, I don't know, like how that rating goes, but, and you kind of think, and you're like, well, they're the same injury, shouldn't they be the same? But it's not like that, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think you see a huge variation in like C6s once you start getting like finger movement, because like some guys can make fists,
absolutely,
but then they can't extend their fingers, and some guys can only extend their fingers,
but
they
can't
got
make
the pancake
fists.
hands.
Exactly. And it's weird, man. And it gets even weirder when it gets like incomplete versus complete, because you have some incompletes that are able to like move their legs. Like you're kind of like, whoa, like I've never seen that. But and then you also have like, I don't know, like
walking C5s.
Walking C5s.
Or upside down quads.
Yeah. Like I've seen like guys like Shimakawa, like who I'm sure he's a spinal cord injury, but just so incomplete to the point where you almost think he's a para. Like it's just.
There's rumors.
Yeah, I'm sure. Hey, look.
I don't know the guy that well personally, but there are some rumors, but
I mean, I hope classification would be smart enough to know the difference, but I have no faith in that shit either.
I do like that you pointed out that like, your journey is like your journey, cuz I always get a lot of questions about like, what do you do to like stay busy and stuff, and like for me, it's obviously like rugby's been a big part of that, and then just like sports in general, and the Oscar Mike Foundation. But it's like, that's just my journey. Like, wheelchair rugby's been a great community, but it's not for everybody. Like,
dude, I so agree with you, man.
There's other things that you could be doing. I mean, I would hope that it'd be like physical, and maybe rugby's not for you, and you get into like hand cycling or field, but even like creative outlets, such as, painting or drawing or making music or writing or something.
I so agree with you, man. I think that it's super important to have like a balance in your life.
Oh,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like I've seen guys who all they do is rugby. I mean, practice, and there is nothing wrong with this. The problem is when all you're doing is rugby. Are you like, do you have a job? No. Do you have any other hobby outside of this? No. Like, they go do rugby, they go to the gym, and they come back home.
Yeah.
And I realize that for me, it's unhealthy. Like, I love rugby. Don't get me wrong. But I understand that there has to be a balance somewhere, right? There has to be time for my body to recover. There has to be time where I step back for a second and say, is there something else I could also do that might further what I want to be as a human being? Because it doesn't just have to be rugby, right?
Yeah.
Sure, everyone's like, everyone's dream most of the time when they start is I want to make Team USA, but it's like, it's not, first of all, it's not realistic. Honestly, it's not. Not everyone's going to make it. Not everyone. There's such a political thing about getting on Team
Well,
USA.
there's 500, 600 players in the U.S.
And growing.
Right.
Yeah.
And they can only select 16.
Right.
And that's across, 7 classes.
Yep.
So.
And that's 12 that actually get to travel, right?
Right, yeah.
So you see this very competitive, and Team Force is gone, so that pipeline is no longer even in that. Like, if that was something you were trying to go for, that's not even there right now.
Yeah, I was on the last Team Force, and when they pretty much shut it down after because it's a 2-year program.
Yeah,
they shut it down pretty much after the first year, and we were just like, well, what do we like? What's the future like for the next generation? Because you look at the current Team US, I would say almost half of them are
retiring.
Team Force alumni.
Yeah. Also, we're about to retire, man. The change of guard, like, you have to think about, like, it's going to happen eventually. Right?
Every Paralympic, even every Olympic team is going to rotate, and there's going to be, it's going to be new faces and old, the guys that have been there before, the guys that don't want to do it anymore are going to move on with their lives because you're not going to become a millionaire playing.
Oh, absolutely not.
It's not lucrative.
And also, like, again, this comes back to, like, having a kind of a, how do I say, like, a balanced life is, like, what do you do after rugby? Like, let's say hypothetically you hit Team USA, you get on the starting lineup, you're playing, awesome, fantastic, great, but what can they honestly ask themselves, what would you do if you can't do this anymore, right?
Yeah.
Because there's going to come a time in every athlete's life where they are not going to be able to perform at that same level, and they're not going to be able to do it, just straight up. And they know it. Like, every one of those athletes know that there is going to be a very cap time on how long they're going to be able to continue this. And some of them don't know the answer, and I'm sure it's scary as hell because you're like, that's such a part of your identity. But that's where it's like I would invite them to also find other parts that they could also, go into that may be more sustainable through their lives. So whatever it is, it's like you were saying, painting, artwork, you scuba diving, like that's like one of a good example, like shit that you can do that's going to help you grow as a person, but it's sustainable for a long period of time that you don't necessarily have to be like, for instance, it doesn't have to be something that you're limited due to your physical function. Like, you were talking about your scuba diving trip on one of your last podcasts, and I think you made a good point. You're like, when you're in the water, you feel like everything's a level playing field, right?
Yeah,
and I can
for sure.
totally, like, I can sympathize with that because I say, like, when I was in the water, when I used to swim, for sure, because I was able to actually stand up. I was able to move, fluidly. I was taking by the drift the same way everybody else was,
Do you swim now or?
Sometimes, yeah. I have a pool at my gym, and unfortunately I haven't gotten into that one, but I do love to go to the pool during, like, the summertime.
Yeah.
And just get some swimming in and just standing, surprisingly, like, just bearing weight and, just being out of my chair for a little bit, being in, like, that.
That's it right there.
You know what I'm saying? Just kind of being out of the spectrum of that confinement that you are when you're on land, grounded. Now, like, mind you, I can still crawl and stuff. Like, don't get me wrong, but, like, it's still totally different when you're able to totally have nothing that you have to rely on and you can just move. Like, it's weird. I know it's weird to explain that to people, but it's like, you get what I'm saying, right?
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
But that, yeah, man, like, kind of going back to the basis is, like, finding something that you're going to want. And so I'm in that process right now of trying to find.
I was just going to ask,
trying to find something that's going to be outside of just rugby, whatever it is. I want it to be physical, right? Like, something that I've always kind of been, like, a physical, how do I say it? Like, a person. I like to work out. I like to, keep myself healthy. There's another thing, sorry, I wanted to add this in before I said that. One of the biggest things that actually does help with this disease is working out. So a big big misconception that was used to be spread by some doctors was that if you worked out with this disease, your disease would get worse. It's not true, because that is only really true for certain muscle diseases, not Charcot Marie Tooth. That is not true. Now, you will have a cap on how strong you may get, especially in certain areas that, like the way they explain it is, I'm not going to have big-ass forearms ever in my life unless they somehow find a regenerative cure. But I can definitely work my biceps. I can work my triceps. I can strengthen that. I've seen it happen. I highly suggest any person that, and if that's not, like I said, it's a spectrum. So wherever your function lies and you have it, just strengthen it and maximize it to the most potential. Because the worst thing is this misinformation I was talking about, which is like, don't work out. No, work out. Do whatever you can. Do maintenance whatever way you can. Stretch. Work, do some icing, man. Like, get into that shit, because it will pay you, and also eat right. It will pay you dividends later on, because, I always say you can't wait to live your life until a treatment comes out. Of course, I'm super excited because we're on the cusp of the most genetic revolution that we've ever been on. I don't know if you've ever heard of CRISPR-Cas9.
I've heard of CRISPR.
You've heard of CRISPR? So there's actually a really good Netflix series. It's a 6-part series, or it's not 6-part. It's a 6-episode series, short series. It's called Unnatural Selection. Highly recommend looking it out. So what it is basically, this is me geeking out here. So bear with me. So they recently found that so how CRISPR came to be was they found that bacteria actually have this immune system to viruses. So there are these viruses called macrophages or something. They infect bacteria, surprisingly, and kill bacteria just like they kill our cells. So bacteria have actually managed to find this way of basically writing the DNA of the virus. So kind of just the way our immune system does with antibodies, and actually implanting it into their own genomic code, right? So what this does is next time that the virus comes in and attacks it, it actually knows the genomic code of that virus to actually turn the gene off. It's weird. Super odd.
Yeah, that is so I don't know, microorganisms are just fascinating. I feel like we don't know anything about them.
Well, and that's what it is. Is the major problem, and where the research needs to still be done is even in the biology of the most basic shit. Yeah. But we're definitely further than we used to be.
For sure.
So what ended up happening was these researchers in California actually found that they could do this with human cells as well, using that exact same CRISPR technology. Then they could literally implant different proteins to go in, and basically it's here's how I would explain it. Take a piece of paper, right, and write ATCG. That's your genes, okay? Now, how we used to look at gene therapy was taking that piece of paper and taking a shotgun and shooting it and hoping you got the right gene to fix it. It's like cutting paper with a shotgun. Yeah, you'll cut it, but you're not guaranteed to hit the right target, right?
Yeah.
You're also guaranteed to have these off-site effects, which could cause cancer and a whole host of other shit. But then CRISPR-Cas9 is instead of taking a shotgun, you take scissors and you cut between these two letters. And then while you cut those two letters, you implant basically the proper DNA that's supposed to be there. So what's weird is in 2000, you're 30, so you know this shit. Do you remember when they did the Human Genome Project?
I remember hearing about it.
Yeah, and they were we finally coded the whole thing.
I wasn't really a studious person.
Fair enough.
But I remember hearing about it.
Yeah. So that actually was such a big revolution because now we were able to see what the genome of the people look like literally every single letter. And we also now we know what mutations look like. So it's funny because for me, it's one single mutation that caused my disease, right? Super fucked up, but at the same time, also fantastic because, this sounds almost weird, but it's I say fantastic because it's you know exactly what's wrong. Therefore, you know exactly what needs to be fixed. So the way CRISPR-Cas9 does it is, and this is the CRISPR method, and then we'll also go into another method that's actually being looked at currently to treat my disease. So the CRISPR method would basically go in. They would have to find some sort of vector, which is like a virus, and it would infect the cell. So it would affect a peripheral nerve cell. once it gets inside that peripheral nerve cell, it would basically find through this, the way CRISPR-Cas9 works, and I'm not completely sure on how it is, but it would find that portion in the DNA that's not properly coding for whatever I need to keep healthy peripheral nerve cells.
Yeah.
Find it, cut it, implant the proper sequencing, and by technicality, those nerves would now be healthy. But here's the weird thing about it. You don't need every single nerve cell to be infected for it to have a therapeutic benefit. You only need like 10%. And within that 10%, then there's something called a bystander effect, where actually that vector's therapeutic benefit somehow actually goes to other nerve cells.
I think they just start reproducing, right?
It's like some weird shit, and I don't even know how to explain it. Like, it's really hard to reproduce nerve cells naturally, like even in the peripheral nervous system where it's possible. I mean, that's literally why everyone with a spinal cord injury is still paralyzed.
Yeah, but when like I don't know, I'm like kind of semi-retarded.
Sure.
But like, isn't it like once the DNA kind of corrects itself, like it just starts reproducing and it starts making copies of the correct.
Right. So what would happen is the messenger RNA, so like what's actually coding for the protein, would then properly code the right protein.
Yeah.
That protein would then start to show up, and then the nerve would, instead of whatever the fuck it does, like causing it to die, it would say, actually, wait, hold on, this is how we're supposed to work.
Yeah, it's like fixing the printer.
Exactly, and giving the right output. So at first, this sounds like sci-fi, right? And I wanted to like make this clear, like it sounds super.
Well, I'd say maybe like 30 years ago,
Yeah.
it probably all was,
It was. No, absolutely. Yeah. But now, so there used to be this disease. Have you ever heard of spinal muscular atrophy, or SMA?
No.
Never heard of it? Okay, so basically, I'll just put it like simply, it's like ALS for kids. Like, it is fucking horrible.
Yeah.
Kids lose complete function at a very young age. And depending on the type they have, basically they're either between 1 to 2 years old they'll survive, 2 to like 4 for the second type, type 3 is like adult onset, and so is type 4. But regardless, it like literally paralyzes you slowly. Like, so imagine a reoccurring spinal cord injury, but only to the motor nerves. Wow. You feel everything, but everything is getting paralyzed. That's terrifying, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, you're a fucking baby. Now, so 2016 happens, and they actually find this. It's called an ASO, and so it's a type of it's a type of gene therapy. What it does is it actually goes into the DNA of these. It's synthetic DNA, literally, and it goes into and it infects the motor neurons in your spinal cord. And what it does is, like, without getting too technical, there's a backup protein that's actually made that helps regulate the protein that's fucked up in SMA. It's called SMN1. So what it actually does is there's a second SMN2 protein, but it doesn't make enough protein for the neuron to survive. So what this ASO does is it goes in and it binds to the SMN2 protein, and it makes it produce more lengthy protein, so it actually keeps the nerve alive. So to put this in perspective, in most cases, and I say most cases because there are some people who don't come effective with this, like they won't have an effect with this disease or from this treatment, but it has literally stopped the progression of this disease in almost most of the patients that it has affected. And they've also regained function. It is crazy.
Yeah.
Now you have to understand the natural history of this disease. There's no possible way that they would regain function. Like, it's not even possible. Once it is gone, it is totally gone. There's a guy on YouTube. He's really famous. He's known like for his interabled couple. His name's Shane Burkow. And he has like this YouTube channel called Squirmy and Grubs, and he's on the medicine. And you literally start seeing how he used to never be able to lift his head, right? Like, he literally had to have like his head on the backrest. And there's a video of him being able to lift his head, which is it's not possible. Like,
that's so fascinating.
It's fucking crazy. There's like people who didn't have hand function starting to have hand function again. Like, people that are, and I mean, this is really effective for babies who are asymptomatic.
Right.
And they don't show symptoms of the disease nearly the same way that they would. Like, it is so big. And then 2018 came along. They had this gene therapy called Zolgensma. Now, this actually, what it did was it literally infected all the motor neurons in the spinal cord, and it gave it the proper SMN1. So the the basic gene that was fucked up in the first
What's
place.
SMN1 again?
So SMN1 is the survival motor neuron, right? So what it literally does exactly what its job is. It tells the motor neuron in the spinal cord, survive, stay alive, continue to use energy. Now, if this is fucked up in any way, you could clearly see there's a huge degeneration, because now that neuron does not have the code to tell it to stay alive, and neurons are high energy use cells, right? So as soon as it doesn't have a reason to, it's going to fucking die immediately, right? Dies, and it does not revive.
Right. Like it doesn't regen.
It's gone.
Like
it's gone. Exactly. Right. And the problem is it happens at such a fast rate with SMA. Like, that's why they live to like 1 or 2. I mean, it's still the number one killer of infants before this therapy came out. So what Zolgensma did was, it actually is like a virus. It's a literal vector. And what it does is it infects these neurons. And motor neurons love, for some reason, these AAVs, which are called the type of virus. And they get infected by these viruses, and they actually, it gives the proper like therapy, and the body starts to code the proper neuron, and they don't show any signs. It's technically, they don't say the word cure yet, because it's really, you have to be really careful when you say that, because it's like, cure means they don't show any signs of the disease. Cure means that there's no breathing issues, there's no muscle loss.
Treatment would be a good.
Treatment is the proper word, right? But this is a treatment that actually genetically targets the disease.
Yeah.
Before, we just treat symptoms. Oh, you can't breathe well, we put you on a vent. Oh, you can't use the bathroom, we do like some urological shit.
Yeah, do like a leg bag or
exactly.
colostomy bag. Yeah.
But it never, how much can you do with a disease that progresses so fast, right? And that's like the biggest problem with SCIs, is like, it's so systemic, right? Like, let me ask you this: what would you want back, in all honesty? Like, if you had 3 things you wanted to bring back.
Oh, I've talked about this before.
Really?
They haven't changed. And I pretty much have said the same 3 things. Probably the last 10 years. Normal bell.
Okay.
Take a normal shit. Because it takes me way too long, and dropping a 5-minute deuce would be
awesome.
It would open up that would free up so much time.
Absolutely.
So for sure, number 1, bladder.
Absolutely.
Normal bladder. Although I've thought about this, like, even if I was still paralyzed and I had a normal bladder, I'd have to figure out how to piss into a toilet.
Right.
Like, would I have to like carry a pipe around as an extension? Or?
So I'll tell you. So I have one of the few things that I do have is normal bladder and bowel function. You'll find a way to just like pull it out and just shoot. Like,
right.
Yeah. So
like scoot up to the edge or something,
or don't just shoot it out. Just
carry a bottle or something.
Or not, just shoot it out, man. Just piss on the side. It's okay.
So that would really help, because then it's like I don't have to worry about making sure. If I go on vacation for a month in Southeast Asia, like I gotta bring damn near a carry-on duffel bag full of catheters,
suppositories.
Right, exactly. So,
right.
And then the third one, it's kind of tricky. I've kind of always flip-flopped on the third one.
Sure.
And it's like triceps.
Okay.
Would be handy for pushing up hills, transfers, all
Absolutely.
That. Yeah. Hands would be great.
Yeah.
And then like normal sex function, but
sure.
Like I feel like I would use my hands way more than I would have sex.
Yeah.
So it's between hands and triceps, but
got you.
I'm leaning towards hands.
Hands?
Just like be able to type and hold a pen. So.
But what about like if you had just like playing on that, like what if you did have full triceps, like where you could just fucking like pick your ass up like off your chair and just do like a pressure relief, or even like let's say transfer into your car a little bit easier,
right? Yeah. Or pushing your chair, pushing up hills,
or like you do even in rugby, like that's like so fucking crazy how just a person having like one good tricep makes the fucking difference. You know what I'm saying? Luckily in that department, I've been really lucky to like continue to actually have really good tricep function. But I've never seen, but I've been so intrigued by how those who don't have it, how they kind of like do it, because you know, again, I can only see as much as I do. Like, I don't know completely, right? Like, I'm not gonna sit here and be like, oh yeah, I completely know what that's like. I don't.
Yeah.
Like, I know what it's like not to have hand function. That for sure. I know what it's like to not have wrist function. I do not know what it's like not to have that tricep. Like, that's not, you know, and I've never noticed how much I use it until I saw someone who does.
I'm the same way, man. I
Yeah.
had no idea how powerful your triceps really were
Fuck yeah.
until you were like, you have it completely taken away and like you can't even dip or.
Yeah. Now, do you have any tricep? Like any?
I have a little bit. I have like trace tricep, so
Okay.
my left side's a little bit stronger, and I'm able to kind of extend up.
Sure.
I'm a little tired, but
Yeah.
extend up to a certain point.
Sure.
And then my right side, I kind of have just like more of a flicker.
Gotcha.
But I have enough to keep them locked out. So that's when I do my transfers, like into bed and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't ever actually lift up with my arms.
Yeah.
Until I can get my elbows to lock, and then I can kind of shift my weight around and get my butt up.
So when you're locking, are you locking almost with your shoulders?
I think I have enough tricep to help keep that locked out.
Okay.
And then, yeah, when I actually do my lift, everything's through my shoulders.
Got you. But it's not like where you can like have a weight here and bring it up. Like,
No.
like not like, okay, I see what
Yeah.
you're trying to say. Like, so like, and that's where I'm trying to like understand, because, you know, again, I told you, like, I don't know what that's like.
Right.
But I will tell you this, I don't have full bicep strength. Like, I actually have 4+ out of here. And
Yeah,
4
that's my friend Eric was like that since I known him. He didn't actually have any bicep, so he was all tricep.
Really?
Yeah, so
Yeah, no bicep strength whatsoever.
no, so he couldn't even bring his arm up like that.
No way.
Yeah. But I mean, he figured it out. Like he was able, we called them like the chopstick method, where if he needed to pick up stuff, he would just keep his arms locked out, kind of grab things. And he had weak wrists as well.
Right.
So it was kind of cool because every time we go out, because we were, you know, old teammates, and every time we go out for like dinner and stuff at rugby tournaments, like there were certain things that he could do that were so much easier.
Right.
And then something like, you know, grab, if a waiter's trying to hand you a plate or something,
Yeah.
it was easier for me to grab it and then hand it to him.
Right. Yeah.
It was-
So he also had full tricep?
Yeah, I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure he had full tricep for the longest time, and unfortunately, it's, you know, progressive. So
Yeah.
he's kind of, I don't want to use the word deteriorate, but he started when I first started playing rugby in 2009. He was a 2.0,
Okay.
and actually, you know, a legit
Deuce.
yeah, and actually a hell of a defender because of his side to side.
Yeah.
And then yeah, he just one year he went down to a 1.5, and then another year he went down to a 1.
Really?
Yeah, I think he stopped. I think he might have hit the 0.5, but when I last played with him, he was a 1, and then
Does he still play?
no, not anymore.
Mm.
Yeah, the team kind of folded for a little bit in Vegas, and then they're starting back up, but it's like a completely different group. And
Right.
Wolf now is just like, you know, been there and done it, and kind of just want to
So
do other
like,
things.
and I'll tell you this, man, that like, that scares the shit out of me. Like, I'll be so real with you, because it's like, but it comes back to that same word of like, it's your own journey. You have to be very careful not to be like, oh, you're gonna be like that guy, even though you guys have the same disease.
Yeah.
Because, you know, like I said, like you don't know, and that scares. I think that scares anybody. You know, you don't know where it's gonna progress. You don't know how it's gonna progress.
Yeah. Or when.
When exactly? Like you really don't know, and it is fucking terrifying. Like it is. I mean,
I think in a way though, like that, if you work good with deadlines and under pressure and stuff like that, and you know that like what you have now isn't going to last forever.
Yeah.
It's like, wouldn't you want to kind of maximize
Oh yeah, absolutely.
the time that you have right now with the function that you have?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, but like I'm also like a big candidate of like, how do I say it? Like everything I have right now, I've kind of had it my whole life, if that makes sense. Like
Yeah.
I've never had good wrist function. I've never had good hand function. It just, that slowly got worse, if that makes sense.
Okay.
losing something like my triceps, losing something like my biceps, even though the fact my biceps aren't full, still like losing what I do have of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, that scares the shit out of me because I'm like, I use that every single day to just do simple shit like type, to be able to supinate my arms, right? Like to be able to lift a fucking weight. Even if I'm using some of my shoulder and traps, I'm still using that muscle. So to not have it, like it's terrifying. Like one thing is like I've really looked into tendon transfers like a whole shit ton because, and those are even spotty as well. But like I'll be honest with you, like I personally would not want to. This is me speaking for myself. I would not want to be in a position where it deteriorates to such a point where I can't lift my own fucking arms up. Like, you know what I'm saying? Because it's like yeah, like I get it. People can adapt, no doubt about it. But there's also that point where it's like you can only adapt so much, right? And I say this example because if you look at a patient with ALS, right, like, and because they're probably the best examples of this, there is only so much that they're going to be able to adapt to until it's basically over, right? You're not going to be able to get them to, I mean, once that they're at the point where they need caregiving constantly, they need to use their eyes to talk, they can do a lot of great shit. Absolutely. I'm not even trying to doubt that, but I'm saying physically adapt, like as you start to see that deteriorate, I mean, it's depressing and it's really scary. Like and I'm not even going to sit here and lie. Like it's fucking terrifying. Like, it's, I think a lot of people who have diseases that are not stable, or even if they do have it and they're stable, but they're noticing that they're getting weaker or they're feeling like they're not the same, just by aging. Yeah, dude, it's fucking terrifying. Like, it's like you have to. My consultant on this, it's like, and I've talked to a lot of other people who have CMT, is that they always say, you cannot compare yourself to other people who have this disease. They're like, that is the number one biggest fucked up thing that you're going to do. They're like, no doubt it might progress. They're like, no doubt. But they're like, you need to understand that you're not just like these people. Like, you may never have that happen to you. Yeah. Or you may have it happen to you. But you cannot sit in fear every single day believing or thinking it's going to happen to you. Like I said, like, and when the second you do let it, like, it's going to fucking destroy your life 100%, because it is, and I always say this, it's one of those things where it's kind of a mental thing. It's like, yo, do what you can do right now, maximize it as much as you can, try to keep going, and keep, like, and don't, like, one thing that gives me a lot of hope is this gene therapy shit, because I truly think, and so, like, that was, like, my last point on this was, they are doing a AAV for my specific type of CMT to actually halt the progression of the disease completely, which is fucking awesome. Yeah, it's fucking dope. So it's actually they're doing preclinical trials right now at the University of Pennsylvania, but then they'll start doing actual clinical trials. So hopefully one day I may never have to worry about that again. That's my hope.
Now, where do you get most of your information on all of this?
Yeah,
you're pretty well read.
Yeah, so I would say the first thing to do is I go on Hereditary Neuropathy Foundation. They go by, like, they're strictly, everything there is source read, peer read by neurologists, totally all that. I also went to NIH, and I'm in contact with some of the people from NIH, and I get a lot of information from them.
Yeah, and what was that acronym again?
NIH is National Institute of Health, and HNF is Hereditary Neuropathy Foundation.
Right on.
So, and like I said, like, they're phenomenal sources, man. And I mean, it's very vital for people to get proper information, because it can become to a point where it's like, if you don't get that, you're going to start reading into it, and you might start seeing shit that's not true, or you might start seeing shit that is like
the WebMD effect.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And then you start to get really paranoid, and then you can get, I mean, it's happened to me. So, like, I say it as, like, someone who's dealt with that before. You just got to kind of keep in. Like I say always, like, try to stay as positive as possible. Like, we are in such a good place right now in medicine. I always say, just hold on. Like, it's tough to say that to someone who's been dealing, like, if I was to talk to Wolf right now, like, he'd probably look at me and be like, well, fuck you, dude. Like, I've lost so much function. Like, you have no idea. And I'm like, I can empathize with that to a certain degree, but like to a certain degree I can't, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, yeah, and I would be like, I can't necessarily be like, oh, there's going to be a cure tomorrow, but I wouldn't say don't try. I wouldn't say don't try to go and get, you know, the proper information. Go to these sites, get involved with this community, because I'm telling you, man, they are phenomenal with getting you with the right centers that actually know how to treat this shit, to even like, again, getting you in touch with doctors that might be able to give you some function back with the tendon transfers and everything like that. You know, I went to a doctor actually like 2 weeks ago, and I asked him, I was like, you know, if God forbid I started losing function in like my arms, like my upper extremity or area, I was like, could they do a tendon transfer? He's like, yeah, they could take like tendons from your lats and your chest and actually give you your bicep back. And I was like, oh, wow, really? He's like, yeah, but he's like, unless it's absolutely necessary, he's like, I wouldn't do it.
Yeah, because you can't reverse that, right?
Right. It's kind of like, and you lose the strength in those areas as well. So it's like you're giving up something to hopefully gain something back.
Yeah, you're just kind of redistributing.
Exactly. And the problem is it's kind of like there's no guarantee you're going to get full strength back. There's definitely, most likely you're going to get like a maximum of 4, but it's kind of like one of those things where it's like it's totally up to you, but if it's going to help your quality of life, maybe it's worth trying, you know? Like I always say, like, shit, like it's one thing, like some people are like, you know, I've talked to like some SCIs who've gotten tendon transfers for their triceps.
Yeah.
And, you know, you get mixed reviews. You know, some will be like, man, I really wish I didn't do that. And some will be like, I'm glad I did it. I can transfer now. I can.
It's sort of 50-50.
Yeah, you know, and you got to just be, you got to do what you think is right for yourself. And like your journey, like I said, is specific to you. Like, so.
Well, I think the biggest thing is just like make sure you do your research. And I mean, like you said, like talk to people in the community.
Oh, absolutely.
And just, I guess, know that, like, you know, you're not the only one going through it. And there's a wealth of information out there. I've always preached about wheelchair rugby. It's just like, you know, you look at one rugby team and you might have like 8 SCI guys that all have, let's just say on average, like 8 years.
Yeah.
That's 64 years of spinal cord injury experience.
Yep.
There's no doctor on the planet that has, you know, 64 years working in that field.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's just such a good resource, and I mean, even now, it's just like you got so much information on your cell phone.
Yeah.
All you got to do is just know where to look for it, you know.
And so that's what I say is like it's a definitely a double-edged sword. Like you have to be very careful because you can read something and it will freak you the fuck out, like respiratory issues or, you know, paralysis of the vocal cords. Could it happen? Yeah. I mean, shit, it could happen to anybody, but like sometimes you'll read in on it, like, you know, and you'll be like, oh my God, that's going to be me. And that's when things get dangerous, is when you start to personalize every single thing you're reading to you, every single person's journey, and you say, that's going to be me, right? Because that's when shit gets bad. That's when you start to, it's almost psychosomatic. You start to, it's like if I tell you don't think of a pink elephant, you think of a pink elephant. Or
I just did.
You know what I'm saying? Like you just kind of are like, okay, shit. You know, or if I'm like, don't think about being paralyzed. Like, oh, yeah, you're going to think about that shit. Like you're going to, you know, it's not, by no means is it one of those things like I ever suggest don't doing, but I definitely do say get it from the right people.
Yeah.
Get that right information. And, you know, be careful, but dude, there's hope out there 100%. I'm not going to be the first one to be like, you know, I've had my rough days too. Like I've had the days where I've like felt scared or like anxious about this shit. But like, dude, like there's so much out there that's going to like happen that can really change it. I mean, imagine like, you know, you have this guy that's dying of this disease and, you know, he actually wrote a book, the Shane Burkow guy I was telling you about who had SMA. And in his book, you know, you see, he talks about in his first book, like how he's dealing with the disease, how he's living. And like, surprisingly, he's like really like positive about it. He's using humor.
How is he able to type this up?
So he still has use of his thumbs.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So like the way their disease works is like more proximally they're affected and then they slowly lose it distally. If that makes sense. but they like lose a lot of shit. Like they can't breathe very easily. They can lose the ability to like chew on their own. Like it's very systemic. But you know, he was typing it up, and you know, it was like I was reading it, and I was kind of like, damn, this is really like scary. Like, cause you know, part of you is like, fuck, like even though I know that's not gonna be me, it's like knowing someone's going through that, and they feel so that there's that helpless feeling, right?
Yeah.
And then in his second book, he comes out and he's talking about it, and like you know, then he suddenly there's this one chapter, and he's talking about that drug I was telling you about, and he says like his whole life turned upside down because it was like now his life expectancy is considered normal, where before it was like capped, like he
Yeah.
was capped at 30 years maximum of survival. He was capped at, you know, here's what you're gonna have and here's how you're gonna die, basically. Now that's not the truth, right? And then he gets the medication, and you know, and it's weird because he talks about how people had some expectancies, like he's gonna be fully cured, but he's like trying to manage that and like tell people like, look, it's just a treatment, like it's not a cure by any means, but it's a very good step in the right position. And then you know,
Yeah.
you see through his videos, like it's crazy because he's in an unenabled relationship, and you know his girlfriend is like, you know, just how they're doing shit on a daily basis, and it's insane, man. Like just seeing how much better he feels, and talks about it a lot, man. And I mean, like I think to myself, like if, and you know, I do this a lot where I'm kind of like, what would I do if I had that opportunity to actually be a participant in this type of shit? Would I do it? Then the next question is, you know, and my answer is yes, absolutely. I'm like, even if I end up in the placebo group and I don't get shit, I'd still rather be in that research and know that in my life I gave it one shot to hopefully have done something, right?
Yeah.
Even if it was like for nothing.
But it even helps like the doctors that are doing that research just to
Yeah.
have, you know, someone with the disease to, you know, let's say volunteer themselves for this treatment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's the thing. I mean, would you ever find yourself like doing something like, would you, if they had like, let's say like a SCI repairment, like, and
I wouldn't be the first one in line.
yeah, and
'Cause
I've heard that from a
yeah,
lot of
I know
quads.
guys that have gone like to
Thailand,
yeah, Thailand's the big one, and
get stem cells and shit.
I think it's entirely possible that we're gonna, you know, be able to cure paralysis, and a bunch of other, you know, these diseases that are just affecting a lot of people, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I don't think I would be the first one in line.
Uh-huh.
I was actually just having this discussion with Noah
Yeah.
the other day, and it's like, dude, if I gave you this magic pill
Yeah.
and you could be completely cured of your spinal cord injury tomorrow,
Yeah.
but you would lose all of your medical benefits
Yeah.
and everything. You would have to figure out like, all right, now what do we do?
Right.
Like we're gonna have to start making some money and stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know if I would, because like the life I got injured right before I turned 21, like a month before I turned 21.
Yeah.
And my first 20 years on earth were like they were great, but I was also kind of a shitty person
Okay.
and kind of an asshole. And like the person that I've become because of this injury and just having to like learn how to be more patient and learn how to communicate things better and like, you know, kind of keep my ego in check and realize that other people are dealing with their own shit too. And like, and then just meeting other people in the community, it's like, I don't know, I feel like I've grown so much. I feel like I've grown in a better direction. Like the trajectory of my life has kind of completely changed for the better. So I don't know, man. Like I feel like everything happens for a reason. So
Sure.
it's like why but then again, it's just like, yeah, there's huge limitations to being in a wheelchair, you know. It's
Yeah.
I'd be lying if I told you like it doesn't suck sometimes where
Yeah.
you know you can't get upstairs or you can't get through a door.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's like I kind of welcome those challenges now. I'm always looking to like just kind of challenge myself. And, yeah, man. I don't know.
Does it? Let me ask you this, because you know SEIs are pretty much not necessarily progressive diseases. But do you think that like as you get older, you've noticed yourself not being able to do the same things?
Mm, I wouldn't say I'm at that point yet.
Okay.
Certain things start hurting more, but I think
Uh,
that's kind of normal. Um, but yeah, I think at one point, I'm gonna get where, my shoulders just are worn out, and
yeah.
like, my wrist are worn out, and that's kind of why I've been taking more like doing things that I know I'm not gonna be able to do when I'm older. So that's what kind of motivated me to, do those marathons.
Yeah.
And I got a couple these like long distance bike rides that I'm kind of got my eyeball on, and
Mm.
um, yeah, but then, it's like you were saying earlier, it's like find other things besides athletics or rugby, and it's like
Yeah.
kind of expand. And yeah, that's kind of why I started the podcast. Was, it's just I kind of geek out over audio equipment, and
Yeah.
I like video editing and audio editing.
Mm-hmm.
But then yeah, it's just like figuring out other things to kind of occupy your time and your mind, because like it's the same thing. It's like you can grow as a rugby player, but now you're only growing in one direction. Where
Right.
like if you learn, let's say you keep studying and you want to learn like a different language, you're going to grow in that aspect.
Right.
And I feel like when you grow in one area, you might get some sort of marginal growth as a rugby player.
Right.
Like, I don't know if that makes any sense, but
No, absolutely.
like, yeah, when you grow in one area, you're going to grow in all areas. You're going to become more of a complete
Person.
human. Yeah, because you
Yeah.
don't, like when you go to like college, and you want to be like, let's say you want to study physics.
Yeah.
Like you can't just go to school and take all the physics class.
Oh yeah.
They
Yeah.
still want you to take, history and writing,
Mathematics.
right? Like they
Yeah.
want you to be kind of a rounded,
Individual.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
a rounded student.
And that's like something I've been struggling with too, man, is to find something that's outside of athletics because one day or another I will not be, whether it's the disease or whether it's me, I'm
Yeah.
just not going to be able to continue to always participate in athletics for
What
long.
what are you doing outside of rugby right now?
So I'm actually looking for a job, man, and
Yeah.
that has been tough as fuck.
Yeah.
Like super hard, man. Like it's ridiculous how much, and I might sound weird, or I might sound like I don't. I'm not gonna even say that. I think there's a lot of discrimination that happens when they see someone in a wheelchair who might still have all the qualifications.
Oh,
Yeah,
I think absolutely.
yeah,
And
um,
maybe a lot of it too is just like a misconception of, maybe what you're capable of, or
oh, absolutely.
or
It's-
just the assumption that you're going to be a burden.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I think that has been a significant problem finding a job.
Yeah.
Also, I think that like, there's a lot of those issues when it comes into terms of like, so I graduated from college, which was awesome. I'm looking into a master's degree, so I applied to some places and I'll
Yeah.
hear back from
What did you get your degree in?
psychology.
Oh, right on.
Yeah. So psychology, and I looked into master programs for social work.
Okay.
So yeah, dude, hopefully something comes out of that. Like that would be really dope.
Yeah.
Um,
I took a really big interest in sports psychology,
Really.
and actually did one term at Oregon State as a psychology major,
Okay.
and then realized that, oh, I actually have to go to like school
School.
on
Yeah,
this,
yeah.
and I was like, I don't want to do that. So that was probably like the third time I dropped out.
Really?
Yeah, I've dropped out like 6 times.
Oh,
I just
dude.
keep going back, and
Yeah, I mean, it happens, man. I mean, look, dude, school's not for everybody. I always say
it's
that.
not. It never was for me, and I just kept trying to like force it. But
Yeah.
I think what I'm gonna do, because I got the GI Bill.
Yeah.
I think what I'm gonna do is just use up the rest of it, taking either finding like certificate programs, like 1-year certificate programs that I
Yeah.
like, or just taking classes that I think would be interesting. Like I was maybe thinking of doing like an audio engineering course.
Yeah. Something that like you actually have interest in. Absolutely, dude.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it makes complete sense. I mean, one thing that I always like look into trying to want to do is like something along the lines of like peer mentoring.
Yeah.
Working with people in similar situations. I just feel that I need to get to a place where I'm mentally, how do I say, completely at ease when I'm in those situations.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, sometimes it's very easy to end up personalizing with people. And there's not something wrong with that, but I think that it can become detrimental at a point because you start to take on their burdens and then you yourself are no longer being therapeutic. It's kind of like if a psychologist, right? Like you're going and you're seeing a psychologist and then after a while they start to try to like they kind of become your friend and then they start to like talk to you as a friend and then you start noticing like you're not getting the same benefit you did when they looked at you from a more objective point of view.
Yeah.
And in order to be a successful peer mentor, there has to be some objectivity because you don't want to you do want to empathize with them, you do want to get with them, but you don't want to get to a point where you're no longer being helpful. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
So something along those lines, something along the lines of also like hopefully working with H&F because I am super passionate about like this shit. Because the biggest dude, the thing I hate about this disease, if anything more, is how prevalent it is, but how little it's talked about. Like, how many people know about multiple sclerosis? Like, you've probably heard of MS like once maybe in your life.
I might have heard about it before I got
Even
injured.
before
once.
you got injured,
Yeah,
right?
I might have heard about it once before I got injured. But
so that just says a lot right there. Our disease has the same prevalence as MS. It's 1 in 2,500. It's still considered a rare disease, but 1 in 2,500 people being affected by it is like a shit ton if you really add those numbers up.
oh
like,
yeah, well I mean even just in this country like 300 million or whatever it is
Yeah.
now, like that's a big portion.
Hell yeah. And like I said, it's super heterogeneous. There's different function levels of all of it. And it's very much a closeted disease in some ways. There are families that have had generations of people who've had this disease and don't talk about it. And it's super frustrating when I hear that because I'm like, that is the absolute worst thing you could do is to not want to get comfortable with this disease and talk about it because that's going to get the word out. Because the biggest problem is, how are you going to find a treatment, fund the treatment for that disease if no one knows about it? If zero people have ever, if like people know what spinal cord injuries are, but people don't necessarily say spinal cord injury, they say paralyzed. They know what paralyzed is. They don't know what a SCI is. They don't know what a C5 versus a T1 SCI is. They specifically know the word paralyzed. That's a problem because then it's like, well, you could be paralyzed because of a stroke. You could be paralyzed because of a disease. You could be paralyzed because of an injury. There's a huge abundance, and they all make a difference. So I always, I really want to advocate more for this, because I'm like, the biggest problem is people don't know about this disease, but it's so prevalent, and it's an epidemic. I literally think it is because people aren't going to stop having sex. People are still going to continue to reproduce, and these diseases aren't going away, right? Yeah. They're going to continue to the next generation and so on and so forth. If we're not going to put a name to it, if we're not going to literally say there is a problem here, we need to fix it, nothing's going to fucking be done, at all, because people are never going to know what the fucking name is of this shit.
Have you thought about, getting into, public speaking?
Yeah, dude, I have, for sure. But, my thing is I don't even know, what to even start with, an occupation to do it. I would find myself maybe making, a YouTube channel and talking about it through there.
Yeah.
Or even, online. A big thing is, I'm a part of, if you're, you've been on Reddit.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so, there's, a lot of these forums that are, specific to, neuropathies or rare diseases.
Okay.
And what we do is we just talk on it, man. We just say, people, like I said, are going through all different types of things. People are hey, how do you do this, or how do you do that, or what, we talk about fear. We talk about the potential of having a family, because that brings its own fear with it. Because,
for sure.
Dude, what's worse than, and I say this all the time, I'm if I ever have a family, the girl that I'm going to have it with, we're doing IVF. I'm not, I'll, of course, smash shit out of her, but I'm not going to ever take that risk of passing that genome on with knowing that there's a 50% chance that my child would have this disease. That's so fucked up.
That's a coin flip.
Yeah, I mean, and this is my personal opinion, but I think it's also irresponsible. And people will definitely disagree with that, but I think that if you saw your child suffer from something you knew you had a chance, especially nowadays, to take a action against having, I don't think it would be wrong to say that. And you know you have a genetic disease. You know it, but you're still going to make a fucking risk.
I think we're so wired to like want to pass on our genes. And I was kind of the same way. Like, I was like, I think it'd be cool to have a son to keep my blood going.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's like, I would much rather adopt a kid and like raise him the right way.
Yeah.
And like, I feel like the teachings that you give a child and the lessons that, you know, like, hey, don't fuck up like I did, or like, you know, kind of like just nurture a child into a functioning adult.
Yeah.
I mean, that's way cooler than just passing on your blood.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, and I totally agree with you. I think that that's definitely attributable, and like it's you, and I feel like that can still be done even without adopting the child. Like, I don't know how often this has happened to you, but like if you've ever gotten into a really good conversation with a stranger and like you found like they took something from the conversation. Like, I like to do that with like younger kids, because I have kids that come up to me and be like, you know, what happened? Like, okay, like I think this is something we could totally empathize on. How many times has this situation, I don't know if it ever has happened to you, but like you've seen a kid in a grocery store, and naturally kids are very curious, right? They're going to ask questions, and they ask, why is that guy in a wheelchair, right? But now, and I think that there's some fault on our community, but there's also a big fault on the able-bodied community, where they like, you'll see the mom just grab the kid and be like, don't ever ask that. Like, don't ask that. And they'll be like, sorry.
Right.
But I'm kind of like, so how I personally view this is like, no, ask the question, because that child has now been taught. This is literally like going straight into psychology, that is cognitive behavioral right there, right? The cognition of asking that question gave a behavioral response from the mom to get mad. That child is now scared and is not going to ask questions. Here's the problem, though. That's going to lead them, as they're growing up, as they see people who are in wheelchairs, they're naturally going to start to, and here, how I look at it is, they're naturally going to start to push them away as something I don't talk about. Right? They stop trying to ask questions.
It becomes kind of a stigma.
And it becomes a fear, too. It's like, oh, man, do I really want to, you know, I mean, like, a lot of people have misconceptions about me until they get to know me, and they're like, yeah, I thought, you know, you were so much more like dependent, or you were so much more like, you know, sad, like weird shit that I never even really thought of. And I'm like, no, man, like, I'm not, like, that's not me. Or they'll be like, I thought you were so much more like, how do I say, like, closed off. And I'm like, no, it's not like that at all. And it's like, what they've been taught is that when you see this, you're not supposed to ask questions. And that's so dangerous, because it's like let's use the analogy of like back in like during like the 60s and 50s, when like racism was like really prevalent and segregation was as well. You know, white people, you know, didn't ask questions about black people. They learned the assumptions of what their parents thought of black people as being, you know, dirty, filthy human beings, which is not true at all. But like, they learned that. They never asked the question, is this actually true, right? And so you would see these videos of these kids, of white kids, just bullying the fuck out of these black kids for no good reason whatsoever, and just watching those kids just, you know, literally, and like look, and they would like look back. Like, I've seen videos of like people looking back at themselves, like doing shit like that, and being like, oh my God, what a wrong misconception I had.
Right.
You know? But only it took them until then to do it. And imagine how much harm they've done then, right? But disabilities are so, like, we are the biggest minority group that is not talked about, right? We talk about, you know, racism in school. We are educated on it. We even talk about, like, you know, the whole LGBT thing is becoming a big topic, still being talked about in schools. But wheelchairs, accessibility, any sort of disability is not. We are not even educating anybody on this shit. And it's so fucked up, because what you have to understand is anybody can become disabled. And the matter of fact is, there's a high likely chance that someone you knew back in the day is disabled now, one way or the other. Minorly, majorly, extremely, or they're even dead because of it, right?
Well, I was probably that guy for a lot of my friends.
Yeah, you know, but like, we're this minority group that we transcend every single thing. We transcend race, religion, orientation, everything. Economics,
yeah.
value, regions. You can become disabled tomorrow. Anybody could, right?
Yeah.
You know this. You know everybody in our community understands this. But yet we are still this minority in the public eye that is not talked about, that is not taken into consideration at times. It's getting better, but at the same time, it's at such a slow rate, right?
Yeah.
And I said the same thing with like my disability is like the biggest problem is we don't talk about it, and then now people don't know about it. Same exact thing with disabilities. You don't talk about it. How the hell is anyone going to know about it? How is anyone going to want to change it?
Well, that's part of the reason why I kind of wanted to start this podcast was just, for one, to have like a media outlet for guys like us, but then it's also to bring kind of awareness to just show people that we, just because I use the term crippled, but because we're
we're
because
crippled.
we're disabled, we still live normal lives, and
Absolutely.
a lot of us still work and travel and are in relationships, and we're all dealing with the same things, and it's just it kind of like maybe humanize the disabled community a little bit more, and just kind of show the able bodies, the walkers, what that it's okay, it's okay to have a conversation.
Absolutely. Even and I think another big thing too, right, is like some of our community is not necessarily the best with it, right? We have those I call them like in the closet disabled people, where they like the second you mention their disability, they just freak the fuck out. And honestly, I'm like, that's not helping the situation. Like, I get it. It's hard to accept it at times, especially if you've never been disabled and now you're going through the motions. I get it. I mean, it's like the grief stages. I get it. It's not easy, but you're not alone. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's the thing that keeps me going to this day is like, before this, I had no idea like that this community existed beyond, I used to play wheelchair basketball, and then I went into playing wheelchair rugby, and like when I went into rugby, it's like I found my tribe. So, basketball, you just have a lot of people that are just so much more functional than you. Right. You always feel like the lower caste. And then when I came into rugby, I was like, shit, like there are people worse than I am. And like, not to play a pity fest, but it's just kind of like, and they're getting along just fucking fine.
Yeah.
Perfectly normal human beings in every other aspect, trying to get along life and just being able to be around each other, laugh at each other when we fuck up and fall, and just not make it seem like it's such a fucking pity fest. Because like at the end of the day, we leave these tournaments and sometimes we're the only people disabled in our community, like or at least the only people that show up outside, that are disabled. And it's sad, shit, like, man, like it's really, and that's why it keeps me going, meeting other people who,
And I feel like I would hope this sport, I mean, it did for me, where before I got involved with wheelchair rugby, it's like I didn't go out and go grocery shopping.
Yeah.
And I barely even went out and got like a haircut, and even then it still kind of felt uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. But then once you get, you find out that there's guys that do everything for themselves and go shopping and go out in the community. I feel like we have a really good opportunity to be like ambassadors for, the Cripple Club, and just to go out there and just go, go do your grocery shopping and show yourself in those grocery stores. Because if you don't do it, especially in a community that's not wheelchair friendly, if you're not at least going out there and making an attempt to do it, they're not going to want to change, because they're not going to know there's an issue.
Exactly.
They're not going to know that the ramp to get in this building is a little steep, or the bathroom's not accessible.
Are too small.
Right.
Or they'll say it's accessible, but it's not. It's just a little bit bigger. And you're like, dude, this is not ADA. But dude, and that's one of the biggest things is we are exactly like you said. Well, actually, I had a question for you, man. Did you, when you were first injured, did you go through that grief stage, or did it take you longer to go through that acceptance of?
I think majority of it was denial.
Okay.
I might have just skipped right over the grief or if I
Well, denial is
yeah.
actually part of the grief stage. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
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 but
yeah.
I never felt like why me or why did this happen.
Yeah, yeah,
It
yeah.
was mostly just like uh oh, I'm just gonna get better because I always do. And at the time the only thing I was really thinking about was just getting back, into the Marines.
Right.
Well, I guess I was still in, but it was like, just get better and get well enough to go back. And I had a war to train for.
Yeah.
um but uh I don't know. I don't know when the switch kind of flipped where it was just like, all right, this is your situation now, and like you're gonna have to just figure it out because
Mm.
there's really two options. It's like you can just kill yourself
Oh,
or
okay.
you can figure it out. And um, I think a lot of people go through that where it's like, am I just better off dead? Like,
Absolutely.
am I kind of a burden right now? And it's like, well, maybe you are, but you're not always gonna be a burden.
Yeah.
You're gonna be able to. You're always gonna get better, and that's the thing with the spinal cord injury. And my mom told me that kind of early on. It was just like, you're pretty fortunate that it's just a spinal cord injury, because this is the worst it's ever gonna be. This is the weakest you're ever gonna be, and you're only gonna get stronger, and you're only gonna get more independent. Versus someone who gets diagnosed with cancer, where they know it's gonna get worse. Like
Oh,
this is
yeah.
the best it's gonna be.
Yep. No, and I can say that with someone who has a disease like mine, like we don't know. Like that's the biggest fucking fear. And like, and like I say, this even goes for those who are ambulatory, who are walking, who may not even have hand function loss yet. I've seen these guys and they are like, they almost look able bodied. They're too functional to play rugby.
Yeah.
But they'll be like, man, my biggest fear is losing my hands. And I'll look at them and I'll just be like, dude, you have no idea. Like, like where the grief, because the problem with these progressive diseases is we go through stages of grief kind of more often sometimes.
Yeah.
We have to kind of be like, damn, I lost that function. Or sometimes we're in denial about it. We're like, damn, I don't think I lost that function. I still have it. But then you know for a fact you don't. Like, I know my wrist, I know my fingers are not working at the same rate that they used to. Even though they're like trace right now, they used to definitely be better than where they were priorhand. And
Yeah.
that is like a tough, surprisingly weird, but it's like one of those things where it's like you don't think about it, but then when you think about it, you're like, yeah, that sucks. Like it really does, because you don't know where does it stop. Do you know if it's ever gonna stop? The answer is you don't know. You don't know what's the but and this is something that's helped me out a lot was, there's like a physics saying. One of my friends was telling me about it, and he's basically like, the future doesn't exist. And the way he was trying to basically state it is like, you got to live in the present. Um, the future does not exist, right? Like the future tomorrow does not exist right now. The past does not exist. Right now, what we're doing right here
Yeah.
is the only thing that is existing, because that is the only thing that is currently happening. What I just said beforehand is just being recorded, but it is not the what is the current reality right now, right?
Yeah.
And on top of it, this is also something I learned from psychology, is you cannot predict the future. And you definitely cannot predict every negative thing that's going to happen in the future. Because I always look back at like when I was like 2 years old, 3 years old. I'm like, if I was to tell that 3 year old, 4 year old self that this is where you would be at 22, how would I be able to process that?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is I would have obviously no fucking idea. I'm too young. But like, it's like, trying to understand that living in the past is useless. It's really never going to do you any good. Of course, it's fun to look at good memories and laugh about shit, but like, it is important to keep moving forward. And like, for me, I always say, like, I state this to myself all the time. I'm like, there's an empowering disabled speaker. His name was Sean Stevenson. And he said something that like really stuck with me. He said, never believe something that doesn't empower you. He's like, if an idea is not going to empower you, don't believe it. He's like,
Yeah.
even if, and I know this sounds weird because it sounds like you're trying to deny shit, but it's like, not really. You have to like understand that if it's not going to empower, like for instance, I'll tell you right now, if I thought that every single day of my life I'm just going to get worse, what do you think is going to fucking happen? It's going to become the literal reality of my disease.
Right. you almost kind of
You manifest
on
it to
yourself.
happen to yourself, right? And I'm not. This is what I'm trying to say, because I can understand how this can be super misconstrued for those who have lost function, to be like, you have no idea what I'm going. And I'm like, no, like, trust me, that's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is, you have something right now. Maximize it, utilize it, love it. But you can't predict what the future is going to be. You don't know what function you're going to lose, but you can't sit around living to wait till it happens.
Right.
Do what you got. Keep going. Keep your health.
I also feel like, I mean, one of the most fortunate things is like your brain wasn't impaired.
Right.
And you know, I know guys that have had traumatic brain injuries, and just, you know, it's so much hard. I would much rather have a physical disability than a cognitive mental disability. Yeah, I mean, my brain was never really like that great,
Yeah.
but it functioned perfectly, and I'm able to think things logically.
Yeah.
And I feel like the mind is just such a powerful tool that, like, as long as you still have that, like, things are limitless for you.
I mean, dude,
like,
look at Stephen Hawking. Couldn't move a
Right.
goddamn thing, but
Yeah.
has been able to solve the most intricate, like, questions of reality. And, like he's a perfect example of it. Is like, you really cannot dismay what is, like, you know, what the ability somebody has. And I do say, like, you know, that's not to state that, of course, losing physical ability is scary as fuck. I think to anybody, because
Oh yeah.
the unfortunate thing is it's going to happen to everybody. Like, you're going to get old, you're going to lose some ability to do shit. But it's even more scary when you know that your disease could be what's causing it, not so much like physical other limitations.
Yeah.
I always state, like I said, like, you know, I try to do everything in my power to make sure that that doesn't happen. I work out, I eat right. Another big thing I wanted to state too, be careful what medication you take. So there's medication that is like super neurotoxic, and
Yeah.
it can literally onset the disease for people. I had actually one of the founders of H&F. She was a marathon runner, right? Never symptomatic of the disease. She had it, but she was not symptomatic. So she was asymptomatic. She took this drug called, I think it was Taxol, which is a cancer. It's like a after chemotherapy drug, super neurotoxic. As soon as she took it, immediately became symptomatic of the disease. She went into foot drop. Her hands became weak, cramped up completely. And she thought, like, oh, I'm going to get that function back. Nah. Then she got diagnosed with, like, CMT. So there's two types as well. There's the axonal one. So it's I don't know. Do you know what, like, a neuron looks like?
No.
Okay, so imagine, like, this wire right
Actually,
here.
yeah, a little bit.
Okay, so, like, you know, imagine this wire right here. The inside is the axon, the outside is the myelin.
Yep.
You know, there's 1 and 2. Those are the main ones. 1 is the one where the outside dies off, and it basically ends up killing the neuron.
That's the myelin.
The myelin, yeah. And then there's the axon, which is the wiring inside. I have the axon one, and that dies off. And then the neuron might still have myelin, but it's not connected.
Okay.
So the neuron dies.
So it's pretty much just like a insulated copper cable.
Precisely. That's exactly what it is, like, if you wanted to use an analogy. And so that's why they're also very different, is because, you know, depending on what your severity is. I mean, I've seen people who have type 2 that are much more functional than people who have type 1, and then the other way around. But basically what this neurotoxin did was it just jump-started what was going to happen later in her life, and completely, like, didn't completely cripple her, but it was like, she's not running marathons anymore. You know, she actually she walked a marathon in AFOs, which I was surprised.
That's insane.
That is insane, because that's painful, dude. Like, those AFOs are not comfortable. But, like, I was like, God damn. So that's another thing I would also say is, like, anyone who has CMT who's listening to this, like, look up on H&F's site and CMTA site, which is just another association. Look up their neurotoxic medication and make sure you're not taking any of it, because it will cause progression of your disease because it's neurotoxic. Something that a lot of people don't think of, but, like, this is a perfect, like, outlet for me to talk to people about this. So I'm like, be smart. Like, know it. Eat right. This is so, like, fucking fundamental, but it's like, it has been proven that by eating right. So there's two things. Exercise has been proven to help this disease. In fact, 30% of those who have done exercise and continued exercise have gained strength and maintained muscle tone. that is huge. And this is even told by doctors as well. Like, continue to exercise. Number 2, eat right. Eating right, not just fueling your body, but there are certain key nutrients that actually help keep nerves alive that certain foods actually really have a lot of. So B12, B6, so fish oil is big on this.
Yeah.
Vitamin D is huge. Make sure, go to your doctor, get a nutrition, get your vitamins checked. Make sure you're not low on shit, because it will help you significantly. Another big problem with this disease is like fatigue. And I've noticed like people say that as soon as they change their diet, they feel so much better. And then, like I said, exercise. Keep moving. Find a way, exercise, go to a pool, strength train if you can, lift weights. Do not give up. Like, you have to do that shit. I made it almost like a requirement for me to, at least the minimum, make sure I strength train 3 days a week, 6 muscle groups: back, chest, tricep, bicep, core, shoulders. That's it. And then also find ways to maintain whatever is weakening, right? I do some hand exercises when I go home. I try to do shit like that. I try to extend my hands and fingers, even though, like I said, it's not going to bring function back, but it stops shit like contractures. It stops stuff like that.
Right.
Do that shit. I literally cannot. I'm very scared for people, like I said, that don't know this, because it took me until 22 to get to this point. And I think it saved my shit, so much. I've talked to doctors about it, and they're like, you're an outlier on your strength. That was one of the things they said. They also were like, for someone like you, they were like, the fact of the matter is that you working out and keeping up with your shit is helping you. They're like, continue to do it no matter what. So it's not just me saying it. These are PhD doctors who I have talked to, who are so intimately, associated with these diseases, that are like, do what you can, And another thing too, I'll also say is, don't let a manual muscle test be your absolute thing. They're very subjective. So I'll tell you, and here's why I tell you this, is because I've had people who have been like, oh, I got an manual muscle test, and they're like, yeah, I have 3s here, so I'm just not going to exercise that because they're just going to get weaker. I'm like, don't. That's the wrong mentality to have. Because, number one, it's very subjective. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm not saying it's totally flawed. But, dude, I've had people who have done it on me and given me different, values. They've been like, oh, this is a 4, or this is a 5, or this is a 2. And I'm like, that's not a 2, that's not a 4, that's not a 5. I know where I know I can tell you, because I'm sitting here telling you where my strength is and where it's not. And it depends on who does it to you. You might have someone that comes out and pushes down on your shoulder, and they're like, oh, that's a 4 minus. And you're like, dude, I have full shoulder strength.
Right.
So I say, don't let that type of testing be the reason that you don't go and strength train shit, because it can be super demotivating if you feel like that's what's keeping you back.
For sure.
Don't let that be the reason. I'm like, if you're going to want to trust anything, go and do an EMG, go and do something, but keep your shit going, man. And it scares me, because it's like, dude, not just my disability, and I want to make that so clear, is that there are so many people who are misled into thinking that their shit is done. They're over. They're not going to be able to do anything. And whether that's because they're not informed enough, whether they're not in the society, but it's just like, bro, there's so much out there that, is on the cusp. We're breaking, again, in my lifetime, in your lifetime, we just saw one disease that used to kill infants is now being treated, That's insanity, because if you think about it, dude, it was sci-fi 30 years ago, like we were just saying.
Yeah.
Who's to say that we're not, and you were just talking about, what you would want to have back, right? Who's to say that's not going to happen? That'd be fucking awesome if it did. But, who gives a shit about, I even say this, I'm like, I don't care if I'm in a wheelchair for the rest of my life. I'm totally fine with that. Just give me the ability to know that I'm not going to get worse. That's it. I'm like, give me that. Give me that much. That's all I ask. I'm like, if you can do me that much, I am content. I can take a whole burden of my life and just shove it down the drain. That is all I ask for. And I think that is a totally achievable goal, and I think it's 100% on the cusp of happening. And like for you, it's kind of like you just want your fucking bowel and bladder back. Like you don't give a shit about walking. I assume.
Yeah. Oh, I don't care about the exosuits.
Yeah.
All those implants that they're putting. It's just like, dude, we got to fix the other stuff too.
Right. Like there's so much more that's being completely overlooked. Like it's like,
right,
dude, you don't give a shit. Like maybe I think you would maybe love to be able to sweat again. Like normally, right? Being able to have that. I'm sure there are things there that you would absolutely want that
I think normal circulation, because I used to run warm. Like everyone would always say, like, dude, like, you know, that you're like hot to the touch.
Yeah.
Like, and like now it's like I'm always cold.
Yeah.
You know.
Exactly.
Dude, there's so much more I want to ask you, but we're well past over 90 minutes, and I don't. Or actually, we're in. I don't know if we mentioned this, but we're in. Where are we? Alexandria, Virginia, at a PVA Code of Honor tournament, and my roommate had agreed to. He went down to dinner, but I need to give him the room back. So we're gonna wrap this thing up. But dude, next time I'm in town, I'm gonna make sure I bring the podcast equipment. We're gonna continue this conversation.
Absolutely.
There's so much more I want to ask you, and I'm gonna do some more research on this stuff too. And,
absolutely.
But yeah, dude, thanks for coming on, man.
Oh yeah,
this
man.
has been really actually educational.
Yeah, man.
I
Absolutely.
feel like I learned a lot, and hopefully the listeners enjoyed it as well, because it's pretty fascinating shit, man.
Yeah, dude. For sure.
Right on, man. I don't know if you want to like plug any like social media or anything. Like, where can people find you?
For sure. So you can find me on Twitter. My username is rswank42, all lowercase. Go find me on Facebook, Rishi Sharma, RISHI SHARMA. And my Instagram is also rswank42, so you can find me on there too. Message me, direct me, talk to me.
All right.
I'm always open, man.
There you go.
Yes,
You
sir.
heard it from him. Thanks again, brother.
Yeah, bro.
Yeah,
no problem, man.